Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, welcome to Paranormal Karen. It is October 23rd. We are taping this in September, so if you hear me cough, we're still in the fires, number one. Also, I hope I'm going to see you next weekend at the Cambry House in Illinois, possibly at Zanies in Rosemont. Possibly still hasn't come through, but hope to see you there. Plug in that. You may have heard the podcast about that already. My guest today, I'm so excited. I just had a reading with her that was fantastic. Alana Hathaway. Did I say it right?
You didn't quite. It's Elaine Hathaway.
Alana.
It's okay. It's okay. It's like a street, a road, a lane, and it's all right. Everybody my entire life has done that.
All
it's
right.
the price we pay for having a slightly unusual name.
It's all right.
And I am located in Thousand Oaks. I do readings both in person and then via Zoom, and I do have a YouTube channel, and it is called Cronecast, CRONECAST. At the Rising Moon, basically all is one word, and I have a lot of fun doing it. I give away free readings on there, and I do spirit guide reads and pick a card readings. It's a lot of fun, and I hope that people will be able to join me.
Absolutely. So at the very least, you got to tune into her channel. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
But you just gave me this great reading. Mm-hmm. There's so much that I think it took 2 hours because we couldn't stop talking in between.
We did have a lot to talk about.
Yes, but we have so much to talk about. But first, tell everybody your journey, and you use many decks, but I'm just going to say tarot. Tell us your journey into tarot or cards. How did it start?
Oh, well, it came via magic, for one thing. One of the reasons I use it's a stage name, Cronecast, is because I do want to call attention to my age, because you and I we're in a similar age group.
55,
and I'm 53, and people have a tendency to discard people in their 50s, particularly women, particularly in this world. But there are 3 magical stages in a woman's life. It's maiden, mother, and crone. And we kind of forget that crones have all the wisdom and a lot of the power. Mm-hmm. So that's why I use Cronecast. And I've been doing magic. It is something that just kind of came naturally to me. I had noticed when I was a kid that I could accidentally sort of make things happen. And instead of studying a discipline, I kind of started making one up.
I love that.
And so I started interacting with candle magic. It turned out that I could channel for people. It is not something that developed entirely until a couple of years ago. I was reading tarot off and on for about 30 years, a really long time. Starting out with my college roommate, we were terrible. We would, it's all that read, look at the guidebook,
yeah.
and oh, look, and it was always the romantic definition that we were interested in.
Right.
Nothing was ever a bill, or there was going to be a test. It's like, oh, he's going to be a blonde, that kind of thing. So I did that for a very long time. I was married for 20 years, and my ex-husband was really afraid of magic and tarot, so I did it very sort of on the sly. He didn't know much about it. As we were breaking up, my tarot card reader actually kept saying, you should do this, and that self-doubt that we all are a little bit prone to. I finally did decide to listen, and that's when I started a YouTube channel last year, and I also have a business, and it is called At the Rising Moon, and I have been so fortunate and so blessed. I've only been in California for about 4 years, but the place that I volunteered at here in Thousand Oaks, which is Many Mansions, plentiful, plethora.
Mansions?
Many mansions. It's the quote from the Bible. In my father's house, there are many mansions. If it was not so, etc., etc. And I recognized the quote as I was driving down the street. It's by Indiana Jones and the Temple of Groom. Indiana Bones and the Temple of Groom, which is a groomer. And it kept catching my eye, and it was right next to it. And I went home and looked up what they were doing, and they're a nonprofit housing provider, and it's super important to me. It's one of my pet causes. And the description on Google and Yelp said it's a great place, but nobody ever answers the phone. I was like, well, I can answer the phone. So I called them up. I volunteered there for 3 years, once a week, every week. And I had the Friday afternoon shift, which was that's when their Housing Central office would be closed. So I would get very colorful and interesting interactions. And so the staff got to know me super, super well. And through that connection, I got almost an established business right away.
Wow.
It is knowing 2 people here in Thousand Oaks and basically 2 people in California provided me with enough contacts that I feel like for a business that's been around for a year, exceptionally successful. But I have been reading for close to 3 decades.
So, so you've had it in you. It's been there, and you know what? Word of mouth is
it's very important,
very powerful.
It's very important.
I started reading for people in Pennsylvania, and it's unbelievable how many clients I have in Pennsylvania.
Well, what happens for me is that it's usually a referral. Someone will get a reading from me, and they'll be like, "You have to go to her. She needs it." And I also, because of YouTube, and because one of the good things that came out of COVID and the lockdown, my God, there is one good thing, at least for me, is that everybody is familiar with Zoom. So I read via Zoom a great deal. I started out yesterday, I read an air traffic controller in Pennsylvania, and then a doctor in Sweden, and I read people in Bulgaria, and I read someone in actually 2 sisters in Singapore, kind of on a regular basis. I've read people in Australia. Canada is a big one too, but I get to have a global audience for something, and it has been one of the most encouraging things, and kind of helps me with my self-confidence in doing this professionally, to know that I'm accurately reading somebody in, like, at one point I read somebody in New Zealand in a chat room atmosphere, and apparently did so accurately. Nice. It is amazing. The thing that we think of as distance it's not the same thing.
There is no distance.
Exactly.
That is a weird one. In fact, I read over the phone, and I don't do a lot of Zoom and FaceTime, and the only reason is because I had a woman on FaceTime who was so distracting, and she was moving her phone around, I couldn't do it, but people worry about that. I feel like the readings, the distance readings can be so much clearer.
Oh gosh, I believe so too. When I'm reading people in person, I just read you in person, so you know that you there's a lot that goes on, it turns into more of a social interaction, and when you're really in somebody's physical presence carries with it a particular energy. And so when you're reading somebody from a remote distance, you genuinely are just interacting with their energy in a remote fashion. And I find that there's a lot more clarity. Some people really prefer an in-person reading. I have no problem doing it, but I absolutely love reading in the streaming capacity. It's
a blank screen, and there's no body interaction, nobody walked in acting strained,
I have better access to guides too. I get more that it's like, and I guess what I am is clairaudient, because I hear a lot of things, and I'll see footage of myself, and I look like a complete lunatic, because it's like, oh, clearly I am talking to something that is not really there. But it works for me. It works for me, and I absolutely love the readings that I do on YouTube. I'm going to sound like a real crazy person here. I love the fact that I am sitting alone in a room reading to a camera, and there's no true interaction there, but it doesn't change anything. The doctor I mentioned, when I was reading for him, one of the details, it had been in a general reading 3 weeks before. As I was reading for him, I was like, oh, I know who you are. And you came through in a general reading, and he confirmed that was the case.
Wow.
So it can be very strange, and we don't understand the structure of time either, which is a big part of reading.
And you know what? Time is one of the things that I always do my best to try and predict, but
time is so hard.
It's the hardest thing, especially because people take their own time with their karma.
Right.
And also, sometimes I feel like I'll be reading about one thing and something different will show up. I'll say, are you taking a trip to Italy? This card is here. And they'll say, oh, yes. And even though we're talking about business, I feel like that's a time marker. Like, oh, so the trip is showing me that this is going to happen after. That's the only reason it can. So there's all kinds of tricks, but time is very tricky.
Well, particularly with this, everything with the lockdown and everything, the way that I sense time is there's a couple of markers in the cards, the way that everybody has a different relationship to their cards. We were just talking about that. When I look at the Knight of Wands, it might mean something to me. When you look at the Knight of Wands, it might mean something to you. And they're not necessarily the exact same thing, but there's validity to it, because your definition has validity for you, and my definition has validity for me. And you can barely ever read for yourself. I know there's got to be somebody out there who's like, yeah, just throw out the cards, I know what they say. For me, it's every tarot card reader I know has to go to another one. Hey, read me. We trade reads back and forth, basically, as tarot card readers. But time, the way that I sense it is, if I think about it, if I'm looking at the cards, it's almost like trying to project out in a line, and I can feel bumps. And usually, if there's a lot of bumps, it feels like, oh, okay, that's 2 months away. That's 4 months away. And it's often accurate. With the COVID lockdown, nothing has been happening.
Right.
So it'll be like, oh, that's got to be 2 weeks away because essentially there's nothing in between here and then. And instead, I've had people calling me up, hey, you know that thing you told me was going to happen in April? It just happened. Oh, it's August. Awesome. So I nailed that one from space. It's the worst feeling, but it is nice to know that things do eventually come true.
Yeah. Time seems to be the one. Every once in a while with someone, I'll say, if this doesn't happen by this time, send me a message. I'll do an update for you. You know, something like that. But so that's sort of just I don't know anyone that nails time really well.
Yeah,
so
I've known a couple of people who are like, I feel better than I am. But what I really like to specialize in, and you said you've watched some of my YouTube channels, so you know that I combine candle magic with my tarot card reading. And what I do is I anoint the candles with specific conjure oils to identify particular areas of life. So I'll have a love candle, a money candle, that sort of thing. It'll be, one example would be Irresistible Me is one of the candles I had anointed for the Spirit Guide Weekly that I filmed yesterday. And that is about drawing things. That is a conjure oil about gain and abundance. And so that pile had a tendency to focus on that, what was coming to that particular person. After that, there was another pile that was anointed with healing oil. And sure enough, everything that came through had to do with particular people suffering from various forms of heartbreak, things they needed to heal, often formative damage, and other, codependency is a big one that I get as well.
Right.
And so what I do is I clarify and amplify the energies available to us via that candle magic.
And do you make the candles beforehand, or do you just have them?
I have them. I usually use chime and spell candles for those readings on YouTube, the little ones that burn out in like 2 hours. And I smoke cleanse them in incense normally. And then I anoint them, and it's very phallic. Up to the sky, down to the earth, root this, and that's reality. And sincerely, like, if anybody saw me from a distance, I'd be, what is she doing?
What is she
candle?
doing? Is she taping porn?
And then I will take those in to my desk, and then I will shuffle for the 4 piles. And I keep the conjure oils behind the candlestick so that I can't even see which pile is which pile. And I don't put them down in any particular order. And it always amazes me how often the cards, I'll draw the oracle cards first, will end up reflecting what the conjure oil was. It's uncanny.
So when you say you put them in piles, because we're on audio, so you put them in piles in front of you? Explain to the...
So there would be, in the kind of pick a card readings I do on YouTube, there are 4 piles. And pick a cards, what happens is you kind of sense the energy signature of something. When you came in, I had you chose a deck, and that's because the resonant energy will draw you in, and you will want to pick that up, and those are the images that will have the most clarity for your particular path. And that is what happens with pick-a-card piles as well. People have them lined up. There's usually a thumbnail insert where you can kind of bliss out, see which one sort of stands out to you. And the way it works is you are literally getting the energy signature off that message. And we don't understand how much we interpret that. This is not going to be the best analogy, but you know how dogs, their world is really kind of fleshed out by how much they smell. And when you kind of read about the mechanics of a dog's nose, everything that it can do in terms of, it's almost like time traveling for them. When they sniff a bush, they can tell who was there 7 days before. They can tell things that have happened.
That's a great analogy.
Well, and that is actually one of the things that has to do with what we sense from energy. We have so much more input than we recognize in our here and now mind. We are always processing on levels that we're not really sure about. When you meet somebody, and if you've ever walked into a room and it's like, oh God, did somebody just have a terrible fight in here? The energy is changed. If you walk into, like, a married couple who's just had a terrible fight, you genuinely can be like, oh, that's a chilly breeze. It's the same thing with any other situation. When you meet somebody, you can tell whether or not you have a resonant energy with them. When you're looking at a pick-a-card pile on YouTube or at a deck, it has an energy that whether or not you realize you're processing it, you are. And the stuff that I do, magic, magic is energy manipulation.
And I have never had someone that matches magic with tarot. It's really
I think I'm the only person doing it. I think so. There's been a couple of people since I started doing it who I see incorporating it more, but rock on. It's a fun way to do it, and it helps bring greater clarity. It's one of the ways that I also think people are drawn to the right reader. And that is a form of energy management and magic as well, where there's so much energetic exchange. Everything around us is energy. We are energy, our thoughts are energy, our feelings are energy. Energy and the ways we interact with it are the things that shape our reality and shape our life and help bring things to us that we're trying to make possible as well, and things that we're trying to overcome.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because in COVID time, I feel like we're in a big overcome.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And so you also were talking about this deck. It's so interesting, called the Steampunk Deck.
Yes.
And for people that have a lot of decks or you use oracle cards or stuff, this was so fascinating to me. So when we were talking on the phone, how did you find the Steampunk Deck? And tell how it reflects on what it means to you.
Well, I have a room in my house that is literally filled with decks. I have a small deck problem, and like I tell people that part of the reason I really like doing this is I get to look at artwork all day long,
Yes.
and I look for meaning in it. And the different art, it's exceptionally inexpensive art. It's having great exposure to these. Sometimes they're like a little kitschy, sometimes they're cartoony, sometimes they are absolutely breathtaking images. And so I liked getting all the decks because I'm an art junkie. And I started noticing that in particular decks, like if I got the Two of Cups in one deck, it had a different feeling than another deck.
Definitely.
There's something called the Modern Day Spellcasters that has their Two of Cups is the same gender. And so it comes off of that, and it's far more likely to be, it could be a same-sex relationship, or it could be a partnership, or it opens up the realm of possibility of what a card can mean. And that's why I have people, they are drawn to the right deck for them, the right things, the right answers, and the right resonant energy. It's the same thing with readers on YouTube. People wonder, can you possibly get an accurate reading from a recorded video?
Yes.
100% you can.
Especially when you find your right reader.
Exactly, and it is because we are always dealing with energy. I was telling you earlier, I have a tendency to attract people with particular formative issues to heal and particular relationship dynamics to heal because, of course, it's a little bit like a former addict being an addiction counselor.
Yeah.
I had to overcome some of those things as well, so people get drawn to me for that. I also attract a lot of twin flames in separation.
You know what? We should say that twice.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of twin flame stuff going on out there.
There really is. It's got to be something to do with this time period. Which,
I think so, too.
Let's face it, reality right now is not feeling so real. It's like a really not great B movie. We have fire tornadoes. Whose idea was this?
I know. And there's something finishing right now.
Yeah.
And this is, I feel like, moving out of the patriarchy into the matriarchy.
Oh, I believe so. I hope so.
Yes. I am in, as I told you, and as you read so accurately, I am in a massive clean it up, let's get over that right now. Through all kinds of ways. Let's move forward. I feel like the lock, or you described it as the level of stuff. I'm ready to go to the next level.
Or to the staircase landing. We're on the landing.
Yeah, and I think the twin flame thing, whether it works or it doesn't, because it is an interesting...
It is a very interesting concept.
For people that... I think most of my listeners know, but for people that know, see if I'm explaining this right, for a twin flame, we're all one energy,
yes,
and then we split to 2, and then it's split to 4,
Absolutely.
and then it keeps splitting. And your twin flame is someone that is closest to the original split.
Essentially, it is they're part of your energetic soul. And they're a mirror influence. Quite frequently, you're trying to heal the exact same issues. So if you've had problems with codependent relationships, then your twin flame likely has as well. And you are kept apart until such time as you heal those. And because no person ever completes us. A really good relationship is you are complete, and your person comes and stands beside you complete in their own right. What happens a lot with people in twin flames is they think they're looking for their split apart or their other half. Twin flames exist because it is part of a consciousness evolution. It is supposed to be part of our spiritual and soul's journey while we are in this lifetime. And it is part of the reason it is such a challenging connection. And not all twin flames end up together. Because
that's the key.
You're apart until such time as you are unified and whole within. And we were talking about that also within your reading and just in general, is trying to find the ways to be kind of the best and most unified version of yourself, finding that kind of balance within to be the best version of you that you can be within this lifetime. And when it comes to twin flames, until such time as you are trying to inhabit that energy, Anytime that you come together with your twin flame, you will be pushed apart, because the only way you can truly be together is when you have done your separate work so that you can come together and be a greater whole.
And the other thing, which, by the way, that was fantastic right there about twin flames. The other thing is sometimes I describe it as sometimes twin flames run too hot.
Yes.
It's too much.
Yes.
It's too, and to sustain a relationship at that energetic level is just... you couldn't.
Oh, no, it's exhausting. And then the other thing is that because it is such an intense attraction, it can be, people can mistake a twin flame connection for something else. Codependency, we were talking a little bit about that. And women particularly in America, we were talking about the patriarchy versus the matriarchy. Women in America in particular are kind of primed to be codependent because we weren't told that we could exercise our power and manifest it in any way to be a leader within this world. And so quite frequently and for a very long time, women would look for a person, a partner, to manifest their power through. And they had less of an identity than their spouse. And that's in, traditional marriage.
And men had to react to that too.
Exactly.
Men had the pressure,
and men have their own emotional and psychological wounds, 100%. They are literally, they used to be, I think it is actually getting better, but they would literally be beaten if they showed emotions in front of peers.
Boys don't cry.
Exactly. And so they were punished for having vulnerabilities, for having self-knowledge and emotional access to themselves. And so they learned to be these repression balls. And so they have their own stuff. I'm not saying I'm not trying to be
no, you did great. And I totally agreed with what you're saying both ways. And I always feel like there's and this isn't you, I feel like there's a compassion that's lost for men.
Oh, absolutely.
And I do it, especially in comedy, because it's such a white man's world.
Yeah.
It's easy to get to forget. Yeah. But I agree with you that women have totally, our mothers.
Yeah.
Our mothers were told they could be teachers,
yes,
or housewives,
very reductive views of what they could be.
Loose women. Remember? Well, you're my age.
Yeah.
Remember a divorcee?
Yes.
Remember how scandalous?
Oh, yeah,
a
exactly.
divorcee was?
My parents were divorced, and it was like there were some people when I was dating in high school who were like, "Oh,
right."
Like I was stained by this or something.
You know what's so funny? I'm so anti-marriage. I remember my friend Teresa. Her mom was divorced, and I remember her mom was really pretty.
Yeah.
She was dating men, and I was like, I want to be that.
Yeah, no kidding,
I want to be a divorcee.
When it comes to twin flames and codependency, though, sometimes what happens is that people mistake a codependent dynamic for a twin flame connection. And the ways to tell now codependency functions almost exactly like addiction. And
you know what? That's a great spot. Hold that thinking.
Sure.
We're going to come right back because that exact phrase was spot on. Halloween weekend is going to be huge. October 29th through the 31st. Giant Halloween shows at Zany's Rosemont. That's right, Chicago. I'm coming back. It hasn't even been a month. Zany's Rosemont. I'm doing the psychic stand-up show. I'm doing a special paranormal show. Get tickets now at zanys.com. Also, that Saturday afternoon, I will be doing an extra show at the Cambry House, which is in Illinois. Please go to cambryhouse.com. You can look at ticket prices and everything going on there. Thursday, the 29th through the 31st, Rosemont, Zanies, and the Cambry House, Saturday afternoon, the 31st. I can't wait. It's going to be a full moon. So, twin flames are sometimes confused with codependency. Hit it.
Well, what happens is, particularly in a codependent relationship, and what the heck is a codependent relationship? It's when you lose your identity, your sense of self, your sense of the worth of your individual and unique life to the idea of being in a partnership or a relationship. The idea that you could never be whole and happy and kind of in a resonant and aligned energy by yourself. If you don't have a partner, you don't know how to be joyful. That is a recipe for codependency. And people get into relationships in which they invest too much of their life trajectory into another person. There's something called a codependent breakup cycle, in which it's almost like transference, and it's like methadone. As you're leaving like a really toxic relationship, some people will meet somebody and they're like, it was amazing, our eyes met, and like, oh, there's lightning, there's thunder. It's like, I feel that person to the very core of my being. And what it is it is almost your brain on steroids releasing that kind of love chemical, that euphoria, that it absolutely masks what is dysfunction. And the way to know what the difference is if you're able to continue to function, if that's part of the twin flame separation test, to figure out whether or not it's codependency or a real twin flame connection, is that when you're in separation, if you are able to be, okay, well, this is a part of me. It will come to me when it is meant to. I'm going to continue on my path. I'm going to find my journey. And I trust, oh yeah, I can feel that person, but I trust that they will be by my side when and if the time becomes right. And until that time, I'm glad that I know that level of love. That's a healthy kind of that's your twin flame, if you really feel that. But so often, and particularly in tarot, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, is that you'll get people who are extremely focused on their person. Where's my person? Here's my person. Often it's in three-party situations, et cetera, and it is
three-party situations, as in
extramarital affairs,
yes.
Like somebody who's already in a relationship, acquires somebody else, and there are formative reasons that people do that. It usually has to do with abandonment and compartmentalizing. So people will have intimacy with one person of an emotional variety and sexual of another. And men, we were talking about the wounds that men sustain from the same patriarchal society that tends to hold us down. They sustain their own wounds, and one of them is an inability to achieve true intimacy. Right. That's part of the reason that men are not just hey, we have to procreate, hound dogs. It really is not that. We are victims of our own socialization and social programming in some ways. So going back to these people who kind of get very fixated on, I just want my person, I can't even function. I can't even tell you how many times I have been, my clients, trying to counsel them through periods where they almost feel like they're dying because they're separated from this person, and they don't understand that's a symptom of codependency. And you can still have a relationship with somebody you've had a codependent dynamic with. You just have to heal the codependency. Right. And how do you heal codependency? It is by having your own purposeful individual life, being comfortable within your own skin, knowing that you're your person. Understanding that overall you are your person, and if you are doing the best job with your person, then you can have your mate.
Yeah, and also sometimes, or maybe, I always feel like too, sometimes twin flames come so far out of left field.
Yeah, they do.
And somebody may be married and meet their twin flame, and all of a sudden there really is a decision. And I feel like, here's the thing, I never thought, because I'm always kind of if I meet one person, I'm a one-person person. Yeah. I'm a Leo, I'm loyal. Yeah. But the polyamorous thing, it works for a lot of people. The more I read tarot, the more I'm you know what, I do think
monogamy is not for everybody.
Right.
And we can, trying to approach ourselves and other people without judgment helps a great deal. But when we're talking about, how can you tell whether it's a twin flame or a codependent relationship, as I was telling you earlier when I was reading you, more than one thing can be true at once, and almost always is. So sometimes it starts out in a codependent fashion, and the way you can tell that it's no longer codependency is, again, when you don't you can function fully. You have your life, you have your friendships, you have your passions, you have your pursuits. And love actually is very patient in a healthy form. That kind of where is he? That I get it. When you really long for somebody, I 100% get it. But that is one of the hallmarks and one of the symptoms of codependency. And it is one of the things that holds women back tremendously as well. Because we are taught to give our love to another rather than giving it to ourselves first.
Yes, and also it's the longing, it's the people are worried. I had a friend that said the most brilliant thing. She was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to miss my soulmate if I don't click on to eHarmony Tuesday at 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's supposed to come around, it's going to come to you.
It comes to you. As I told you, I did have to heal from codependency myself, and it was a terrible feeling. It was really, really difficult. And I really did long for somebody and wanted them in my life, and it was a very specific person. And as I look back now, I'm so glad it didn't happen, because I was not healthy and I was not well, and I didn't want it for the right reasons. And the ways that I can tell that, it's oh, no, I'm better now, is well, I hope it gets here, but if it doesn't, I got a big life to lead. So
I got to tell you right there, Alana, this segment right here is going to be emailed to a lot of people. That was brilliant.
Well,
brilliant with the codependent and the twin souls.
It is it's so scary to people who are in codependent dynamics to hear, listen, what you have to do is be happy by yourself, because they think it means I will no longer be able to love people in the way I am used to. They think it diminishes something. They don't understand it makes it stronger. It makes it so that you're not afraid. You can have arguments and not be terrified that you're going to be left. You can have consensus on things and still feel like you're an individual, unique person.
Right.
You can have a very, very full life and still have a tremendous connection, a resonant and like timeless love. Because part of the thing with twin flames is they are almost always past life relationships as well.
Yeah.
And so you're drawn to one another. And it does happen in very odd circumstances sometimes.
And I totally still apologize about the coughing. You know, Jessa Reed, a friend of mine that's on the podcast.
Yeah, I've heard her.
She's
great.
amazing. We also talk about how we think twin flames means there's only one. And there isn't only one.
Yeah.
Like, and that, to me,
no, the soul is infinite. We don't just...
Yeah, and so you may actually... It's one of those things where people talk about the one that got away, or I should have married that one, or the regret and all this. No, when you're really open, that connection can jump onto another person. It's not a, we talk about living in scarcity even with love. We're like so much scarcity.
Well, we were talking before about what the collective is, and then it's splitting apart and splitting apart and splitting apart. Like energy attracts like energy. So there's the collective, the grand collective, all the souls, all the living energy in the world that forms the collective. And then there are basically groupings of like energy. So that I can draw a lot of people who are in twin flame separation. I draw a lot of people who are trying to heal from formative issues. I draw a lot of people who have a lot of the same things that I do. And it's not simply because maybe I have the stuff that will help them heal. It is because you are attracted to the same frequency. You're tuned into the same dial. I've seen people through healing for codependency, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful thing, particularly for women, because they feel more powerful. It's incredibly empowering to heal. The problem is that, and people will tell you this about healing is disruptive. It does not necessarily feel good. You can be like, I thought I'd be like, somebody would wrap me in a fleece blanket and bring me cocoa and here until you feel better. Yeah. And instead it's, as we were talking about, sobbing your guts out till you're shaking and crying. Yeah. And it's like, and then afterwards it's like, oh, I do feel better.
Yes. Well, all change, I think. Even I feel like that, and I always say we're part of the Matrix, and the Matrix wants us all to just follow the rules and just go. So the minute you start to pull away and change or think a different way, it's almost upsetting to your stomach. Like you almost have to go, hey, is this all right?
Yeah, you question your own sanity a lot and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that we were talking a little bit about that I'd like to revisit is that when people meet and it just comes out of kind of nowhere. The thing is, it never really comes out of nowhere.
Right.
If you're in the wrong relationship, I have something to say on the things happening for your highest good that anybody who ever listens to me on YouTube, I will go into that in a moment, but I think it's so important. But what happens when you kind of get that lightning bolt, holy crap, this has just ruined my entire life? It didn't. There were signs going through that were ignored. That is just how it works. When I told you I was in a 20-year relationship with somebody who was remarkably emotionally abusive. And for 10 years, I knew I was supposed to leave. But I would always come up with a reason why I shouldn't. I would always come up, towards the end, because he was, really being very unkind to me, I decided he had to be mentally ill. And I couldn't relieve a sick man, right? It's amazing how many signs, how many nudges the universe will send you when you're in the wrong path, on the wrong alignment, to try and be like, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go. And when that whole, hey, it works, it devastated my world, I met this person, everything I thought was my reality is suddenly gone, that is after you've usually ignored multiple sign, and finally the universe comes along and goes, you gotta move, you're not in the right place.
Tower card.
Yeah, that's what it is, divine intervention. The tower is one of my... I joke around that maybe I'm the tower, because when I'm telling people things in readings, sometimes it's stuff that maybe they didn't want to hear. And it is that kind of like that epiphany, that enlightenment that is not always comfortable. It's the same thing as healing.
Yeah, in readings, I always make a special effort to make sure if someone is asking me about their spouse, to sort of connect with their spouse also, and sort of go like, hey, there's always two sides. There's always a give and take. And a lot of times people don't understand a give and take can be when you make yourself the victim, and you get very connected to being. Some people, that's their identity, and then that's a very hard identity to change.
Well, that actually, if you wouldn't mind, I'd kind of like to segue into that entire thing where does everything happen for your highest good? Because that's something that's very, very common in the light worker and the tarot and the spiritual community, is people will have these like insanely traumatic things happen to them, and then they'll go to a reader, and as they're reading about it, they'll say, well, that was for your highest good, spirit planned that. Emphatically, no, that is not what happens. We make our future, we make our world, and we make our reality with our choices. And sometimes we are the victim of other people's choices and of our own, and we ignore the signs. One of the people I was counseling basically about leave, and she did leave, she was talking about how I kind of knew he wasn't the right guy. This man, I don't even want to go into what he did. It was terrible. It was genuinely, hideously abusive. The day she got married, her minister went missing for 4 hours. The ceremony's supposed to start and nobody can find the minister. And I was like,
wow.
Sign, anyone? Sign?
Wow.
So when we are making the wrong choices, that's when we get a lot of energetic assistance to be like, no, not that turn, not that turn. Come, no, oh God, took that turn. And when we make the wrong choice, that's when we get so much angelic and energetic and guide assistance that people think, oh, it was for your highest good, when actually it's the higher realms and your spiritual team going, let's get you back on a path, instead of it being this, you were supposed to go off of a cliff and bust your face and like lose everything as part of your path. No, that was determined by the choices you made on that path, and you get more help and more assistance when you've taken a wrong turn to put you back on the right path. The part that is for your highest good is the energetic assistance, not the trauma, not the damage, and not the circumstances. Because the reason I object to that is that, sincerely, you can be talking to somebody who was gang raped, for goodness sakes. It's not appropriate to say that unless you fully know. And it's kind of not appropriate to say that. Only can we really judge
Only
our
can
own.
the own person say
Exactly. And so that's something that I go on and on and on about sometimes in that YouTube channel, because it is something I'm trying to counteract. And I just wanted to explain why and the reasoning behind it. And it's not that I'm trying to undo like decades of spiritual teaching or something. It's just a slight misconception about how that energetic guide assistance can work when difficulties arise. It's so hurtful to people to hear there is a universal divine and spirit presence that beat the crap out of me for my own good. Sometimes we are denied things, sometimes we make mistakes, but when we're talking about things like life is perilous, other people can be perilous as well. They make choices, we make choices, and then when we aren't making the choices that will serve our highest good, we get things that come in to try and lift us back into the area that we're meant to. And that's how that functions in the way that I understand it and what I've been able to channel.
So the fine line, and this is the one that I'm always interested in, the fine line between divine intervention and like, let's say, like, or powering through. You know how much I like powering through.
Me too.
Like, so sometimes it's like, oh, that happened, maybe I shouldn't make a left turn.
Right.
And sometimes, do you ever feel like it's like the universe is asking, do you really want it? Go ahead and make it if you want it. Like, do you know what I mean? Am I being clear?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there are, like, when we talk about
being tested, that's the word I wanted.
Well, I absolutely believe we can be tested. And also, I think that there are multiple access points to our path. You don't have to take point A, point B, point C, point D in some sort of linear fashion. What you do need to do is fulfill certain landmarks within a lifetime. We do agree to that before we ever get here. As far as I know, that is what I believe. But the way we get there is determined by different things. You know, in the tarot, the major arcana, for me, represents fateful things that cannot be changed. And in the minor arcana, those are things that we determine with our choices. We have more sway over them. So the most of our life is just made out of like little tiny details with big events. What I'm always talking about with tarot is that it's meant for guideposts, not roadmaps. And so there are these guidepost marks where it's like you are supposed to be, for me, I guess I was supposed to be a tarot card reader. And so things changed until such time as I was willing to do that in a capacity that would help. And it's because I possess healing energy. And I wasn't putting myself in a public enough venue for people to find me. It took me a while to figure out, it's like, why this particular path?
Right.
And by the way, the things that happened in my life beforehand were not training me in order to be able to do this. That was what I came here to do. And unfortunately, I just repeated the patterns of probably lifetimes before.
You know, it's funny. Do you ever, I've always said this. People always tell me I have a past life in the circus. And I always think I was the little tarot reader, or I was the high wire, or maybe I had many.
That makes a lot of sense for you,
doesn't it? And that I was a man.
Oh, I've been a man. Like if you interact with me like through email or, and particularly because I have that strange name that kind of looks like a dude's name in writing, people like can mistake me for a man all the time. Then they meet me and they're like, hey, "You're a tiny woman person." Like, but I used to have like spiritual people tell me that it looked like there was a giant man standing behind me.
Wow.
And I kind of think that's probably my personal energy. For a while, I was like, oh, maybe it's my soulmate, maybe it's a spirit guide, maybe it's an archangel. And the more that, like, because I'm unusually assertive for a woman and unusually determined for somebody in my age group, you share that as well.
I do too.
You're like, direct to the point, get it out there. That is proof to me that we all contain masculine and feminine energies. Gender is a little bit of a mask that we wear as we walk around in the world, and it has far less meaningful.
And it's going away.
Thank God.
That's why the kids have the pansexual and
it's wonderful.
They have all these things, and I'm like, they're going to get it right.
The whole binary way of thinking about things is simply, I'm so glad it is going by the wayside, because there will always be people who are outside of that kind of the normative behavior, which, as we know, like breeds a ton of dysfunction and unhappiness and a lot of thwarted life's purpose. The more we can open up the doors to understand there is more than one way to be, there's more than two ways to be. There is simply your way to be, and the universe created you in the shape and the form that you are meant to be in. And will it be a smooth path? Kind of no. But it's,
for no one. No one really has it that smooth.
And that is 100% true. With where I live, I end up reading people, and I know you do too, I end up reading people who are from extreme privilege. And from the exterior, it looks like they have these perfect lives. And you read their cards and it's like, oh, now are they comfortable and more secure? Often. And I'm not in any way being dismissive of how terrifying poverty is. Deprivation is one of the most constricting things that there is for spiritual growth, and then just for happiness. It is a terrifying world sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you have the blessings of being able to sleep and eat and shower in a safe area, that is more than many, many, many people have. In the area that I'm in, people can have things like, 4 and 5 houses, and they still have internal and emotional pain. They still have formative wounds, and they still have parts of themselves that cause deep shame. Shame is one of the most corrosive and eroding things that we inflicted upon ourselves. Society inflicts it on other people. If we can heal that, and one of the things that does that is having a world that encompasses more, including a less binary way of thinking about things.
Yep. The other thing too, I think I could talk to you forever. We're going to come back. We're going to talk. We're going to do 2 seconds on the Steampunk Deck.
Awesome.
And we're going to talk about curse breaking.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, the curse.
We're going to get very dark. Everybody hold on. All right. Hey, everybody, let me tell you about my friend Alana Hathaway. She's not just an incredible tarot reader. I know, because I had a reading. She also does curse breaking, healing and prosperity magic, and the removal of dark entities. I had a client that was constantly being bothered by a dark entity. I sent her to Alana, and man, she cleared that situation up right away. It was so impressive. She does so many things. Please check out her website at therisingmoon.com. There you can click on her YouTube channel and take a look at her, because you're going to feel like curse breaking and the removal of dark entities. This is a little old woman sitting in the corner of the room with a hood and a cape. No, she is the loveliest person. She does so many things other than tarot. Please check out her website at therisingmoon.com. You can also hear her October 23rd on this show at therisingmoon.com. All your paranormal and metaphysical needs will be met there. Okay, so you showed me the Steampunk Deck, and
Yes.
for tarot people, I want you to tell them, this is really interesting, how you, what it does for you. This is what different decks can do for different people, because I'm a Rider Waite girl, but I just started incorporating new decks, and you encouraged me on this deck.
Oh, well, you have such extensive knowledge on tarot, too, and you know how to look for all the symbolism and things. So what happens with different decks is they do have an influence on the meaning of the cards. There's so much nuance within tarot. And part of what I do with my decks is I have a tendency to program them. I will go to the same sorts of decks over and over again. I have relationship decks. I will go to, hey, do you need a romance read? That's the one I reach for. I usually do multiple draws within a reading, so I have a business deck, and I go to it for its business energies over and over again. I don't really know what it would do if I was like, hey, I'm going to use you for romance. It's probably just cards would be flying everywhere. So what happened with the Steampunk Deck, because I do love the artwork, I am something of an art junkie, was I saw it online. I think I was on eBay. Like what I would do, some people shop for shoes. I look at for art decks. I looked at it and I thought, oh, I love the steampunk imagery. I bought it. It got here, and I hadn't started using it. I thought it was going to be a general deck, and I was doing a live stream on YouTube, and somebody asked for a past life read. And I looked over at it, and because of the imagery, because it's, like 1890s London type of thing, I was like, oh, that's perfect. I grabbed it. I got an incredibly clear read. By the way, it was hilarious what was coming off of that particular reading.
Oh, wow.
This person had owned a mine, and there was a cave-in, and they'd let the widows and orphans starve afterwards. Because they're like, what karma am I working off? I was like, this is going to be a bumpy ride. When people ask that, it's never going to be like, oh, well, you didn't walk the dog when your mom
right.
Instead, it's going to be like, this has been following you for many lifetimes because you were a crusader and technically you lopped people's heads off. It's always going to be something where it's like, it's the same thing with past life regressions, the things where everybody wants to know their royalty. And instead, what we really carry forward, the ones that are resonant with us, the ones that remain with us, the things that we're still trying to work off, are usually difficult and sometimes painful lifetimes. And so that's what will come out in those past life reads. So that's what happened with the Steampunk Deck, was I started reading it, and because there are shadows within all of the images, if you concentrate on a card, if you look at it, something will usually stand out to you. You know this because of all the use of imagery in the Rider Waite.
Yeah.
And it's present in all decks. Like there's the Everyday Witch deck where there's a great use of cats and what the cats are doing. And as you're looking at it as a reader, something will kind of come to the fore to tell you something. And I was looking at the Steampunk Deck, which has shadowy corners, and I could see people in them. And I was like, wow. And now I only use it for spirit mediumship or for past life regression or for anything that is a little less attached to the here and now. I used it the other day to try and do a pet communication thing, which is not my forte, and I copped to that immediately when the person asked for it. I'm like,
I always say, you probably want some, I'll try, but...
That's what I said. And then it turned out that the person asking for the read was a pet communicator.
Oh.
I was like, dude, you can do this. So it was actually quite fun.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so now we're going to get on the dark side.
Yeah.
So you do curse breaking.
I do.
Now, how did you get into that? What is that about?
Okay, so what you should know about the magic that I do is that I never, I know that there's a bunch of tarot card readers who also do spell work. And when people come to me for readings, a comment that I've got is like, you never bring it up. And no, I will never actually offer to do magic for anybody. I work with particular disciplines, it's celestial and angelic magic, in which if I'm the person who's meant to help them using divine powers, they find me. They will talk to me. And so somebody came to me and they had a curse on them. They had a curse on them. I had a curse on me. We were talking about this. To this day, I have no idea why somebody put a curse on me. I just know that this person has been described in the same details by multiple people. And I don't know what I've allegedly done to this person.
And and I'm going to split that in two. So we're going to come back to your curse.
Sure.
How did the person that came to you, did you read that they had a curse? Did you know?
What happened was I was reading for this young woman in South Carolina. I told you she worked with the justice system and came in contact with a lot of narcotics felons and therefore a lot of gang activity. I was reading for her on a codependent relationship that she was in and helping her through those stages. And she started talking to me about things that were going on in her apartment. And it was very obviously like energy and, I'm going to go with evil entity activity. Things would get moved. Her cat was freaking out of nowhere. And she kept calling me saying, there's something here, there's something here. I'm telling her, get a bell, sage, palo santo, put sea salt in the corners, lemons are good. Like, I'm coming up with like, what else could it be? What else could it be? And I did notice that every time I read her, I had a particular card combination. And it was the Tower, the Ten of Swords, and the Three of Swords, like right in a row. I thought it had to do with her relationship. She's actually the one who said the person she was in a codependent relationship was involved with this drug gang. And she said, he used to tell me he was cursed. Can you take a reading and see if he was cursed? Because they work with Santeria, and it's very common to try and keep people in gangs with magical influence. And I do know that they do a lot of gangland magic. They do. And so I did a reading, and sure enough, it was like, oh God, there's so much magic here. The devil was there, the magician in reverse, all the things that are like, that's somebody doing darker magic. And I read it, and some of the things that she was talking about, she had people showing up at her home. She had the strangest things going on. And
when you say people showing up at her home, to threaten her, or just odd people knocking at the door that were weird?
That. It was like she found people going through her mailbox one day. She had a bunch of different encounters with people that there was the energy of chaos around her, which was drawing in more chaos. Exactly, and it was very dark, and it was very hopeless. And so she asked me, if she had a curse on her. It showed up that she did, and then she asked if I would break it for her. And she didn't have a lot of money, and you and I have discussed this before, and I've heard it on your podcast, when somebody is in trouble with like demonic or evil entity, money is not the point. And so I said, if I'm supposed to, I will do it for you. And I pulled a reading, and the way that I commune with what I work with when I'm doing magic, it obviously came out that it's like, no, you're supposed to do it. And I didn't feel equipped. Wow. It's like, this is an MS-13 gang curse. And I was like, they're going to cut me up into little pieces. They're going to find me all over the country.
Which, you know what, and back a second, it's very interesting because people always talk about places and they say satanic cults are doing animal sacrifice. Yeah. I think you're more right on. It's more gangs.
Yeah,
it's more.
It is.
So when they say satanic cult, I always kind of roll my eyes because there aren't that many satanic cults. Are there people dabbling in magic that they shouldn't? Absolutely.
And then there's I don't do baneful magic. I don't do baneful magic. Just period.
What's baneful?
Baneful is cursing. It is breakup magic. Exactly. Baneful magic is when you wish someone ill with your magic. I don't do anything that will take away someone's free will. I do prosperity and healing magic mostly. That is most of what I do. When she asked me about curse breaking, I was like, oh God, this might be out of my depth, but I'll give it a shot. And I researched how to do it. It was the first time I broke a curse, and I was being told very clearly, you're supposed to be the person doing it. I was so afraid, I called a friend of mine up who does practice and said, will you hide me? Do a concealment spell, put a great big, because I don't want anybody, I didn't know what was going to happen. This is like coven level, oh my God, creepy, reattach. I don't know how much it will take to get rid of this, because I had her clearing, I had her doing spiritual baths, I was burning intention candles.
Every tool in the toolkit.
Exactly. Everything I could think to throw at it. And in fact, honestly, I thought about calling you because I'd listened to your podcast so much that I was like, maybe she knows like a demonologist. What is this thing? I did not know what to do, but I was being told I was supposed to do it. So I had a friend of mine conceal me, and the picture's actually on my Instagram. The candle burned into the shape of a Virgin Mary.
Wow.
It was really like, oh my, and it did work. So I did a curse breaking followed by a cut and clear and then a fiery wall of protection. So I did like 3 different spells right in a row. And I have to tell you, I was scared out of my brain when I was doing the curse breaking on the first one, because I'm like, oh, I've just drawn the energy into my home. I have never it was Fort Knox in terms of energetic shielding. I prepared for that spell for 2 days beforehand to make sure there was nothing it could latch onto that would be scary. I shielded my dogs.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I was genuinely, I don't think I've ever been as afraid to do anything, but it was like, I'm supposed to. And it did actually work. Wow. Oh, we had the funniest thing happen too when we were talking about, we both felt the effects of a spell. Have you ever wandered into somebody's magic work when you're doing a reading?
I don't know. I'm going to claim a don't know on that.
Okay, so when you can obscure magic, what I asked my friend to do, like almost everything that I do, I put some obscuring. It's usually with lavender. It confuses people. It makes them a little fuzzy brained. It conceals things.
So when you say obscuring, you mean
hiding it from readers, hiding it from other practitioners. Most practitioners, like who are professional, will not do magic against one another.
Oh, so you hide the magic from the people.
Exactly.
Yes, got it.
Yeah.
So that especially people that are very religious oriented might kind of freak out.
Particularly when you're breaking a curse, like you don't want, like half the time they've like done this through a reader. Half the time it's like, hey, this person wishes you ill, pay me $600, I'll curse the crap out of them.
Right.
And there's a difference. I do hoodoo influenced folk magic a great deal, and then there is voodoo, and voodoo is actually a religion. And people have a tendency to associate animal sacrifice with things like voodoo. It is not a harmful religion in and of itself.
Right.
Can you do creepy things with?
You do it with Catholics. That's what Santeria is.
Absolutely anything. You can pervert the intent of almost anything. And so when I'm doing magic, there is no real such thing as like, oh, there's white magic and black magic and gray magic. Intent is everything. Right. Intent is everything. And so I only do magic for people that I'm told I'm supposed to help, and I try to help people. I call it helping the worthy. That doesn't mean that other people are unworthy.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm not the practitioner for somebody. In this particular curse breaking, that's what I started doing. And after that, I got an influx of more and more people. It was like sending...
The seal was off.
Pretty much. And so now I break them pretty regularly.
Wow.
And it works. It's very meaningful to me to know that I can do something that improves somebody else's life.
Absolutely. And so you had somebody put a curse on you.
Apparently, yeah. It was really, really, really very dreadful. We had talked about when I discovered it was there, and I did have a friend of mine working on removing it. When it detaches, it can be incredibly uncomfortable because you're purging out mine was some kind of heartbreak and despair curse. So it was kind of robbing me of the will to live. Terrible things were happening at one point. An ant colony invaded my home. Bees came down the chimney at a different point and filled up the house. It was freaktastic. And I don't understand why I didn't make the connection that it was like, oh, well, clearly I wasn't even practicing magic at the time.
Right.
And so it didn't occur to me, oh, well, clearly somebody has cast some mojo in my direction and is not of the friendly variety.
Right, because also, too, isn't a curse, sometimes you have to buy into it?
Well, the thing with a curse,
except for if it's a lightweight curse.
Yes, exactly. The thing is a lot of times people who have bad luck are like, I must be cursed, I must be cursed. Cursing is a very specific form of work, and you can go to a professional, and it's very easy now, particularly with the proliferation of casters on YouTube, on the Instagram, on the internet makes it used to be very difficult to find somebody. You have to go to this little gypsy person who's a little bit freaky to get somebody to cast a hex, a curse, a jinx, or something to bring, basically baneful energy into somebody's life, to erode their happiness and to destroy their peace. That is the curse.
And you know what else? It's weird. I feel like I don't know that many people that have that much anger.
No, and that's it. That's it. I don't either, but what I've been finding as well is that you tend to view the world from your own viewpoint. So what you contain is what you assume other people contain. I have met people who it is a great struggle for them not to be vengeful, not to be filled with anger, and not to actively hate. And so I do know that there are people who have lost their own energetic balance battle, and that I think can lead to trying to inflict pain and misery on other people because you are also in pain and misery.
Right.
But to really make a curse stick,
to go,
there has to be focus. There has to be intent. With magic, all that the candles and the herbs and all of the other things, they can be embodied and activated in order to, like basil's good for prosperity. And so you bless, activate, and empower basil. Usually you empower with your dominant hand to bring prosperity. As you dress the plate, it's putting your will into something. What you are is the magic, and you are channeling something into a tool that then is condensed energy that represents that. But it is your intent, your will, and your focus that makes the thing happen. And that's behind curses. That's why, like, particularly personal ones, and I guess what was on me was a very personal one, but like to this day, no idea what I did to this person. No idea, like I don't know who it is to this day. But I do know what was real, because when it was being removed, I told you about the experience I had where I did not know it was possible to be that afraid. I did not know. And like, I have anxiety, but I'm not a fearful person.
It's a different kind of afraid, because like I said, a couple times I've talked about into that house I walked into. Yeah, it's a different awareness.
And that fear that comes from what is a demonic entity or an evil energy is entirely different from anything that...
Exactly.
You had someone on who was talking about being at the Skinwalker Ranch and the fear that he felt when he went outside to, I think it was like use the restroom or the outhouse or something. I forget.
Oh, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan. When he was in, it wasn't Skinwalker, but yes, and he ran into that thing.
Yeah,
yes, everybody knows Ryan Singer.
And so that kind of like that fear, that it redefines how you think of fear. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to me, is that, and I told you I was standing in my really quite lovely kitchen, safe as houses, locked doors, nothing menacing me, memory foam bed nearby, scared out of my actual wits. I was shaking and crying, and I had this weird vision that came in where there was something menacing me, and I did overcome it basically that night, and it's never happened again. But for a while I was like, did I lose my mind? What the hell happened?
Right.
But I don't think I did. I do think that I was offloading and trying to heal my root chakra for a very long time, because it was attached to my heart and my root chakra. And why somebody put it there, I don't know. I don't know. And did they do it intentionally? Apparently, because it was a professional casting.
Well, it could be something as you talked to some woman who needed to leave her husband, or some guy
perhaps, sincerely. And then the other thing, the reason that it was so vicious, and the way that you can tell the difference between when you said that most people don't have that much hate, those aren't the worst curses, because those burn out. Like when you're not.
Yeah, a lot of people.
It's that detached conjure where people they make a contract with a spirit, with a non-human entity, and they are paid in different ways. And what is enacting something against you has literally never been human. So it has no compassion, it has no empathy, it has nothing resembling a conscience, and it will not stop, because it has been contracted in the magical and energetic universe to come after you until such time as you're dead. And the only way that you can get rid of it is through magical and energetic practices, but it feels entirely different from like magic from the heart, magic with intent. This is like hitman magic. And that's what that fear felt like. I knew that it was nothing really attached to me, and it was gone in the space of a day, that terrible rising up of fear and the purging of it. But it was, I still, like, I can, like, in my mind's eye, see the landscape that I was seeing that night. And I wasn't hallucinating. I mean, I was very aware of my surroundings. It's that I had this vision of myself as this tiny thing about to be, it was a non-human thing, about to be murdered by it, and like having to sit there and waiting for it to come down. And that's why I was shaking. There was something above me, and it went away. It did, with the magic that I do, I call to the guardians who guard the four corners to aid me and to protect me in this and all that I do. And that is both the four elements, and then it is also, we were talking about the archangels representing different parts of the elements. And of course the archangels are archangels because men make stories around powers that already exist. When there is power, there are going to be structures that are built around it in order to use it. That is what magic is. That is what religion is. That is what spirituality is. We are making up narratives to, and does that mean they have no validity? No, they can still have a lot of validity. But they are kind of funneled through a human channeler, and there is human influence in that. And it is not the, gospel truth, not to use a contradictory term, but the Archangel Gabriel is air. the archangel Michael, who fought the devil and won, and the Christian religion, is going to be earth, and then Raphael is the water, which is about your emotions, and it's usually Uriel, who is fire.
Wow, and that's a funny thing I was telling you, for you guys, a snapshot of interesting story is I had read for someone whose spouse was, she wondered if he was possessed, but actually what I saw was, I talk about this about my ayahuasca trip, I saw I saw two other people and me. And I saw this for the first time in another person. And his alter, one of his other consciousness, was a magician.
Yeah.
And he looked at, and I remember during the reading, I said, he can see me. Mm-hmm. So right now, there's been some weird stuff brought to me.
Right.
And so I was talking to Tommy about it.
And you had the magician in reverse in your reading.
Yeah, I think I just reversed this.
Good.
Because my place is always very active. But what was happening, it wasn't getting evil or nasty, but there was and in fact, this is last week's episode, Jeff talks about an Anunnaki or a Thoth. Mm-hmm. Thoth showed up. And all these things are going on, I know. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking to me about jinn. Jinn are becoming very popular here, which is not really a great thing.
No.
And I was saying that to Tommy, and Tommy said, get some anise, star of anise. That will clear out if that's what you, I hate to say use against jinn or clear them out, but that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. I got it immediately. My apartment went quiet. And he had said, did you piss off a magician? And I said, no. And this morning I got up and I was like, I know who this was. Yeah. And it's funny because after I looked back, that magician had turned its back to me. So he's done with me.
Well,
but it was probably just a threat. Like, you see me, I see you.
Yes, and that's an energetic connection, and it is kind of a power testing.
Yeah.
So one of the things you're talking about with the proliferation of, people interacting with jinn and a couple of other things is the only thing I don't like about YouTube, there are some wonderful casters on there. There's some wonderful magic practitioners who are incredibly ethical, and they put together incredible work. But there are also just these spells that it's like, oh no, don't chant that. Like that is a demon that you are calling on. You are calling on a demon. And I'm always going on and on. I get this, I told you about the Making Magic card, and anybody watches my YouTube channel, I give the same thing, the same lecture over and over again. Do not do magic until such time as you research what you're doing. Make sure you've energetically prepared. Don't do something you don't understand. Do not call on something, do not invoke a power that you have not learned the basics about, because they may expect payment and they may actually stay with you. When you contract with something, it doesn't end when you're like, well, I got what I wanted. It's like, no, guess what? You got a pet. Mm-hmm. And so it's very, very important to try and do things in as informed a fashion as you can. And part of the reason that I do celestial and angelic is that I don't conjure things. I don't make bargains with spirits.
Do you put gods and goddesses in that category?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, in the good category.
Celestial and angelic, absolutely.
Right, okay, because I've been talking to a few of those.
No,
and I was
absolutely.
just like, wait a minute.
No, there are non-human entities that they do destructive things within the world.
Right.
It's working with that. When I was talking about what was likely a completely emotionally detached curse that I was
guy was in doing his job. I'm supposed to mess up her life.
Exactly, and they don't care.
Yeah.
It's not even sociopathic as much as this is my function, but they have no animus that they're putting in behind it. But they can call on these things that just, like I said, almost made my hair fall out, because it is terrifying what they are able to conjure. And they have to have that kind of ice-cold demeanor in order to interact with these things. But they absolutely exist. And they can exist in lower levels. So if you're like, I'm always saying this for people with love magic, for the love of God, please don't do it.
Right.
It's not just that, it's wrong, it's that it's wrong. If you think about it, if you're trying to make somebody love you, first of all, it's not really possible.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be directed at one person.
No, you can invite, and I will do that. I will ask new love, or to re-spark love, or there's a bunch of love magic to strengthen a bond that I will do, or to open a door. I will not do any kind of make that one fall in love with me, because even if you can influence someone temporarily, it will not last. Mm-hmm. The energy for that will come from a different area of your life. And then if you think about it, if you saw somebody in a bar, you would never walk up and frickin' roofie them, because you'd know that's wrong.
What a great analogy. That's the class you should be teaching.
Oh, thank you.
You really do need to put out a class.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I know I've gone on and on forever. It's been a lot of fun.
We're exactly on time. But
Awesome.
there was something else I was going to say. It's also fascinating. And there's a lot of you out there, and I will say it again, and I've said it a million times, that really want to see something.
Oh, God, no,
I want to
no.
see something.
No, you don't.
Yeah, and Tommy even said, when I said to him today, I texted him and I said, you're never going to stop blowing my mind, because he had said, did you piss off a magician? And I was like, of course not. I don't even know a magician. Yeah. And it all came back around. And he said, well, I'm glad everything's good, and experience is the best teacher, which I agree with. But folks, you don't know when you're talking demonic and jinn. You don't know what just stay away from it.
No, you don't. I actually
have fun with angels.
Yeah, well, have fun with angels, and then understand that, like, you see the things you're ready to see. What I had, I actually don't date, but I did go out on like 2 coffee dates to make sure that I was like not afraid of men or something, and that was a while ago. And one of the guy, and I will take a tarot deck with him, and I'll be like, here, I'm going to read you. And if somebody says no, that's a good sign that I shouldn't be hanging out with them. But I read this one guy, and he had multiple cards that were a little bit distressing, and he kept telling me that he wanted to see a demon. And I said, no, you don't. And I told him how some people believe tarot readers talk to demons. We do not talk to demons.
The Middle Eastern Islam thinks we're talking to jinn.
We don't talk to demons. We have spirit guides. There are angelic presence. We don't really understand what angels are. That's another subject. We don't. They're not these fluttery angelic things that like are only beings of light and good. The energetic ones are, but they can take a form in this reality as well and channel divine and angelic magic. And they're just as much of the angels as the non-corporeal beings. We don't really understand our reality.
We don't know, yeah. And even Tommy, who is the smartest, most educated person he knows, he says it's a constant battle of keeping the ego out of it and just trying to stay on the level. Like I'm not over, I read and hear all these people, we're doing exorcisms and we're beating up demons. And I'm like, I don't think you've met a real one yet.
Well, then this guy, when I told him that, some people think I talk to demons, he's like, it'd be okay if you did. And I was like, no, it would not. No, it would not. Maybe it's okay with you and I must go now.
Right,
but for me, it's not okay. People who think that it's cool, and it's not cool, it is terrifying at a cellular level, that it will shake up your existence, the way you view life, the way you view your security in this world, and also what you think comes next when you discover what real evil and what real demons are.
Right.
It is a profoundly disturbing experience.
For whatever reason, people think they're as powerful as that. I don't know.
And you do a bunch of paranormal stuff that I just think is amazing. Like, sincerely, I'm a bit of a weenie for that. I'm always telling them, like, you can talk to me as much as you need to, but I do not want to see you. No, I do not.
And so this is wonderful, Alana. Yay! Tell everyone again where they can find you, where they can book a reading, how do they get a hold of you? Tell them everything.
Well, you can find me at my website, which is www.therisingmoon.com, all is one word. And then you can also find me on my YouTube channel, which is Cronecast. And by the way, when you search it, it will try to turn it into Chromecast. And you just say, no, I really mean Cronecast. And there's only one of me. You can find me on my YouTube channel as well. I would love to have people there. I'm at about 2,000 subscribers, and I'm really pleased with that level of growth, but I would love to have more people.
You need to have 1 million.
And then you can contact me through my website for readings. I read via streaming. I do phone readings as well, but I actually really love to do streaming.
Do you like the face-to-face?
I really do. I really do. Well, as you can tell, I make an almost freakish amount of eye contact.
Yeah. Oh, good. Not freakish, but good amount.
Yeah. No, it's important.
You're making a connection.
It's important when you're talking to somebody, particularly about things that matter to them, that have energetic resonance. It is very important to have that access. And it's not. Access is not the same thing as influence.
Right.
It is important to let somebody have part of your humanity as well if you're having access to them. When we're looking at the cards, I'm always touched by what a trusting thing it is for somebody to lay out their cards in front of you. And it's not that you can't see everything in cards, absolutely not. but you can see somebody's wounds, you can see somebody's pain, and you can see somebody's fears. And so part of the reason that I do like the streaming read, and I do like have a tendency to look people directly in the eye a lot, is because it's important for them to know that this is a safe zone.
Right.
That you're being a little vulnerable here, but you don't need to worry. So that's part of it.
All right, everybody, go subscribe to her channel.
Thank you.
I hope I'm going to see you all next week in Illinois. If you can leave me a review wherever you listen, 5 stars or whatever, go to my website, which is paranormalkaren.com or karenrontowski.com. Sign up for my email list. That'll have everything on it. And also, if I'm coming to see you in a club soon, I hope the world has not exploded yet.
I hope so. We'll tuning in from smoking cinders.
That's right. All right, everybody, have a great week. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. Bye, everybody.